That is my biggest complaint with old school Christianity. It's like it's almost a bad thing to work hard and be successful. If God wanted me to be rich, I'd be rich. It's like, dude, you haven't done anything. You haven't even got off your couch. You don't even have a job.
All right, welcome everyone to the Audacious Faith Podcast. It's finally here. This is episode 100. We've made it, and the person that was with me on episode number 1 and episode number 50 is now here for episode number 100. We're actually on location of a set of his podcasts, which is Win Anyway. If you haven't checked that out, make sure that you do, because there's lots of great episodes that are out there. And so, so excited to have my oldest son with me, and that is Mr. Jay Jr. How you doing?
Sweet, doing good. Doing good, yep.
Hey, as we get started today, he doesn't know we're going to do this, but I think it's very important to recognize why we're both able to have a podcast, and that is that we actually have something in common with our podcast, and that is the same producer.
That's right.
That's Mr. Jay Occupon. In fact, I'm going to ask him to come around really quickly just to pop his head into the camera. Jay Occupon, this guy is a godsend, and we would not have a podcast if it was not for him.
3 J's on one screen.
Isn't that amazing? In fact, Jay, they can probably hear you. Just speak up really loud. How is it, because he does a lot of great stuff on his own platform. How is it that they can reach you and follow you?
It'll pop up. So.
Oh, he's going to put it up on the screen. So make sure that you follow him as well, because I tell you, we wouldn't be doing any of this. He is the best at what he does, and we wouldn't be doing any of this if it wasn't for him and all of that. So as we start this podcast, I'm kind of excited. People probably look at this and they say, isn't this kind of weird, having these discussions? Don't you guys talk all the time? And it is true that, we see each other probably at least 5 to 6 days a week on average, go to the gym, we have church, we do all that kind of stuff, family gatherings. But these kind of conversations are not necessarily in the everyday deal. So I treasure them, and I hope that you do as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
Especially because I have no clue what we're going to have a conversation about.
Perfect. Well, I did take some notes, because there are certain things that I definitely want to cover today. But yeah, he has no clue. But I want to start off with this. There's a time and there's a season for everything. In fact, that's one of your favorite verse passages in the Bible, right? You even have that tattooed.
Yep.
Right? So I would kind of like to start with that. What does that mean? Why is that significant to you? And maybe how has that meaning even become more true over time?
Yeah, I think to me it gives you a peace of mind, knowing that there's a time and a season for everything. So a lot of times we chase things that we want, goals, life accomplishments, whatever it may be, relationships, and we chase those things, which I think is a good thing, because you're supposed to have goals and run after them, and self-improvement and things of that nature. But I think discouragement for a lot of people comes in them being tied to the accomplishment and the finish line versus the process. And so for me, there's been a lot of things that I've chased and worked towards through the years that I'm actually, thankful to say we hit every single goal that we've ever set, along the way. And obviously we have more still to this day. But understanding that there's a time and a season for everything, I think, is what allows you to continue to chase things without the discouragement and frustration or the feeling of failure, because I love the process and the journey more than the end goal. So I think the end goal and the accomplishment will come when it's supposed to, at whenever that time and season is supposed to be. But understanding that and being grounded in the fact that, hey, there's a timing for everything, means that I'm going to continue to work and I'm going to continue to enjoy the process without deciding, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to hit this goal. Maybe I'm not supposed to make this amount of money. Maybe I'm not supposed to have this business succeed, or whatever it may be, because we set our own timeline and our own deadlines on things that maybe is not necessarily what God has in plan.
Okay, awesome. Well, let me ask you this. You're known as, you're a success coach, you're a business coach, you're a Forbes contributor, you're a financial coach. People come to you, you speak all over the place, you've spoken in the country, out of the country. In fact, if you accepted every speaking gig that you were given, you would be constantly doing it, right? Between the businesses that you have and everything, you're at this point an 8-figure earner. Now, when we started in 2011, that was definitely not the case. So there's been a huge change. Here's the question, because a lot of people think, oh man, if I just had enough money, if I just made that time, if I could just buy anything I want, if I just, life would just be perfect, right? So my question here is this: what things does money solve, and what things does it not solve?
There's a couple pieces to the answer that I would say. First of all, I think if a problem can be solved with money, it's not a real problem. So a lot of times we have problems that very simply wouldn't exist if we had better finances, right? Mm-hmm. And so those aren't actual problems for wealthy people, because those things don't exist for wealthy people, because you write a check and it's gone, right? Whether it's credit card debt, whether it's repairs on a home, whether it's that your refrigerator went out, whatever it may be. Your kid's not doing well in school. Well, you would put your kid in private school if you had the money for it. Even health things. People don't necessarily always eat healthy because it's cheaper to eat unhealthy. And so there's a lot of things that money would solve. Sure. Therefore, to me, it's not a real problem. Real problems are things that money can't solve. Cancer. Now someone could make an argument that money does solve cancer. I don't know. But health things, there's a lot of health things that money can't fix, right? But there are a lot of health things that money can fix. Here's what I think, and I've been broke, and then I've been not broke, and I've been in the transition of broke to not broke. Mm-hmm. And having experienced all of the above, I think that a lot of people they think they're chasing money, but they're not really chasing money. They're chasing what money gives you, which is options and freedom, peace of mind, just security in a lot of cases. Money gives you, really just the life is so much more fun when you don't have to filter all your decisions, through money. Sure. Money for me gives, it's just so much more fun. You go to the grocery store and you see the mom with a full grocery cart carrying around, dragging around 5 kids through the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you could she probably doesn't even need you to do it, but the fact that you could just pay for their grocery cart, or paying for the car behind you at Starbucks, or picking a random family in a restaurant, and picking up their bill, but not telling them that it was you, right? Just sure. Doing it without even saying it. To me, that stuff's fun. Retiring your parents, being able to pay for your niece to go to private school, and just like there's so much. So does money solve everything? I don't know. I think you can make a case that you could be happy and at peace and fulfilled in your life with no money, sleeping under the freeway overpass. But I would rather be happy and at peace and fulfilled sleeping in, my dream house rather than under the freeway,
Sure, I think most people would agree with that one, yeah.
A car is a car, right? Like you could have a Honda Civic you've driven for 25 years and it's been good to you and you get 35 miles a gallon. But it's still, a car is a car. So mm-hmm. I would rather be happy and at peace and fulfilled driving my dream car. It's just more fun. There's just money. I think money enhances your character. So if you're a jerk and now you're rich, you're probably a bigger jerk, possibly. And if you're a great person and now you're financially rich, you're probably a greater person because you can give and contribute more, and you could do more. And your mind is a giving mind, and if you have a giving mind, your mind's creative to find more ways to give and more ways to contribute and more ways to make an impact and stuff. So,
Sure.
yeah, I think, I don't know. They say that the number one cause of disease is stress. And for most of America, the number one cause of stress is money. And so you can make a case that money is a lack of money is the cause for a lot of problems.
Sure. And what you mentioned about character and everything, we're going to bring that up in a couple of questions. But let's talk about this, going back to the time, to the season, the value of time, the value of moments. 2023, although it was a good year, it was also a very difficult year. A lot of things happened. People that were close, teammates, business partners, good friends, had some serious health issues. We had some losses, things like that.
Right.
And obviously all the money in the world couldn't fix that. So, how, maybe a little reflection on how the value of the moment, the value of taking in interactions and times. A lot of times we take that for granted. I know for years I took it for granted. It's like, oh yeah, it's another gathering, it's another this, it's whatever. Did that maybe magnify the value of those moments and those friendships?
Yeah, so you're talking about just everything, like, it makes you kind of notice.
Yeah.
And there's a couple pieces to it. So first off is, so for example, when Crystal was sick, which is my best friend outside of, Ronnie and family. Mm-hmm. So the first thing was, I was dealing with that. And then at the same time, a close family friend, like we consider family, went through surgery, right? Mm-hmm. So Ronnie for 2 months maybe 3 months was in Seattle.
Right.
And I was here.
Right.
And then I was for 2.5 months in Texas. Mm-hmm. Right. And I don't remember I think she was home at that point. And so between the two, that was like 5 months that we were actually apart. Uh-huh.
Which would be the first time in years
and ever, yeah.
Right.
Which it's interesting because it didn't seem like 5 months. I guess because there was so much going on, mm-hmm. and we talked so much, anyways. But the first thing that she had even brought up was the fact that we have the option, like, to just be gone. Mm-hmm. For me, I sat in the ICU for 2.5 months. Mm-hmm. Didn't go to work a single day. Obviously I don't have a job, but I didn't go to work a single day. Like most people, you can't do it. I mean, right. Who can go sit there for 2.5 months?
Sure.
Ronnie was gone in Seattle for all that time. Couldn't go there. So that was the first thing. That comes from entrepreneurship, right? That comes from building something for yourself. Mm-hmm. That comes from putting yourself, that comes from the 12 years before that, right, that put us in that position. But the other thing, is it makes you realize that, like when Crystal passed away, she was 32. Uh-huh. It makes you realize that life is short. And, at the end of life blows by so fast. But at the end of life, everything stops. And then you realize 99% of everything you've done in a lot of cases doesn't even matter. Mm-hmm. Like at the end of her life, when the day before she went into coma, the only thing she cared about was making sure that when she's gone, all the money she leaves behind in life insurance and all that it was taken care of correctly so that her kids are set up for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. And that her spouse is, that Johnny was taken care of. Everything else was completely irrelevant, And so her only concern was, her, at the time, 6-month-old daughter.
Sure.
And her 2-year-old son. And then, you just realize that, I think I got a different perspective from it now, which is that if it's not going to matter in, 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, and then I'm not going to let it matter for more than 2 minutes now. Because we spend so much time worrying about stuff that in the big picture really is irrelevant.
Right. Isn't it kind of sad, though, that it takes, for a lot of people, that was an extreme case, But a lot of people spend so much energy on stuff that really, if you were in that situation, all of a sudden it'd be like, who cares? I can't worry about that right now.
Right.
It's kind of sad. I mean, don't you see this a lot where everyone is just spending so much stress, anxiety? We hear so much about anxiety today. And most of the stuff they're anxious about isn't even happening, right? People are just literally driving themselves crazy about all kinds of things they can't control and really isn't that important.
Yeah. No, and the sad part of it is that so much of it, if you think about where we spend most of our life, we spend most of our life at our job, right, our career, and then we spend most of our time, dealing with stuff that is day in, day out stuff, but really in the grand scheme of things, like at the end of life, it's not that important.
Yeah.
Like someone being upset with me. I'm like, okay, that matters, but then we turn it into something that it's not. Like a simple conversation would probably fix it in most cases. But we don't have a simple conversation. It's more fun, and it's easier for us to just ignore it, and then it carries over and carries over and carries over. And then, I saw it even with Crystal, all these people who, they're all at the funeral.
Yeah.
Right? But they probably had something they were upset about before, and then you get to the funeral, you realize it wasn't relevant. And now you're just upset that you never fixed things, and that's how things were when someone passed away. Things were never resolved. And so there's just so much stuff that doesn't matter. And then the money thing's a big part of it.
Right.
The money thing's a big part in the sense that the saddest thing to me is that most people have a ton of stuff they would really want to do in their ideal life that they would want to do, they would want to experience, they would want to be able to create as an experience for someone else.
Yeah.
And they do none of it because they're spending their whole entire life going to work to make money, to pay bills, and just kind of survive. And there's nothing to me more sad than the fact that people have ideas and plans and goals and things they'd want to give and things they'd want to contribute. If everyone had a mission or a nonprofit or some sort of philanthropy opportunity to give, they would, right? But we're just in survival mode trying to survive.
Yeah.
We just miss out on like everything, so much that life has to offer because we never really get past just surviving,
Right. Well, that brings up another question that just came to my mind as you're saying that. And this is, by the way, I'm very proud of you in the sense that this is something that you actually do very well. But you've also met a lot of people that have those conversations. Oh, once I make this amount of money, once I get to this level of success, I'm going to give this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to help this. Have you seen, though, where sometimes people start getting that success and they just keep buying more stuff and they really don't do it?
Yeah, of course. I think there's, in my experience, there are different stages of success. If we're talking from a monetary standpoint. So, for example, in business, I've been in business now 13 years. In the beginning, I started off with nothing. No, but the one thing I didn't have was a bunch of credit card debt because I was so young. And I was so broke that I couldn't even get credit, And so I didn't even have credit card debt, right? Because there's broke, like a true innocent broke means I ain't got no money. That's it. But I'm not buried in debt because you have to have something in order to even get debt, Otherwise the creditor's not even going to give you debt. So from a monetary standpoint, I was just a young innocent broke. Wasn't buried in debt, just didn't have any money. And so then you start in business and you start making money, right? And then you're like, oh, now I can get a credit card. That's the problem for a lot of people. Then they go back to really broke, which is now you're the adult version of broke, which is you have money coming in, but you're buried in credit cards. I thankfully never got in that spot. And so then you go these years in business where you're struggling. And so during the struggle phase, what do? You're just kind of in survival mode. For a lot of people, they're in survival mode living on credit cards.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where you're making money. So a lot of people, they hit the 6-figure mark in business. They start making 6 figures. And everyone thinks they're living the dream. But the reality is they're catching up on everything they fell behind on trying to get to that point.
Sure, yeah.
You know, so you're like, now I'm making 6 figures and I'm still broke, but on paper I look like I'm doing good to the world. And then if you could get past that, you know, you start saving. But then you started off from nothing. You've worked so hard. So you're like, I'm going to reward myself a little bit, right?
Right.
And so what ends up happening? Then you start to upgrade your lifestyle, get a new car. You know, you buy yourself some nice new clothes. You get yourself a nice pair of shoes. You know, you treat yourself a little bit. You know, so then what happens? Still broke, right? And then you keep going past that. And then if you could, like, get past that. So I call that like financial creep, right? Where your lifestyle creep, your lifestyle continues to improve as your income improves. So you never really get ahead. I've been in that spot too. You know, and the problem is I remember Ronnie would always be like, I'd be like, oh, well, dude, I really want to get this car. I was like, come on, it's like, I only have to have one more client a month.
Yeah.
Well, by the time you do that 30 times, like now you need 30 clients a month.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
30 times I've upgraded my lifestyle. Now she's like, how many more times are we going to need one more client a month?
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of those phases, but I think if you don't save money, then you never get ahead. Saving money is so important. And if I could go back, I would have saved money 8 years sooner. You know, that would be
good advice.
That would be a big thing. You put a couple $100,000 in the bank, and you tithe and you do everything you know that you're supposed to do along the way. Then it's a lot easier. You know, it's a lot easier.
Right. So tying in with that, and you just mentioned tithing and things like that. Now here's an interesting question that pops up in my mind, and that is, how does faith dictate ethics over just getting a profitable result? Because, I mean, you've met a lot of people on both sides of it, and people even that say they're people of faith, and yet, I mean, we're not going to name any names or anything, but let's face it, some people would rather be profitable than faithful. You know, so where's the balance, or is there a balance, or is that even supposed to be a question at all? And how have you seen, maybe without giving specific examples, people crash and burn because they make those wrong decisions?
Yeah, but then I've also seen people that have no faith and practice no faith just succeed through the roof, you know? And so I think character, and just like your very traditional Judeo-Christian values, right? Like just like is being a good person, period. I mean, I think that's something that spreads all the way across, no matter what your faith is, right? You would think, just it should, from a character
something
standpoint.
called common grace. So,
Right.
Okay.
You know, like, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, you know, don't screw people over. Like, they're just basics.
Right.
But I think faith in business, you know, I had someone message me 3 or 4 days ago that said, he said something to the extent of, let me see if I could find it real quick, because I think I could find it fast. Yep, here it is. He said, my wife and I went to church on Sunday, and it was a Christian church. The message was amazing. The pastor was so good. I was thinking in church and thought, I bet Jay puts all his years of church and God in his daily work and leadership, and that's why he's become so successful in business. You know? And so I think that I believe that if you do it right, God blesses your efforts. Like I'm a real big believer of that. I believe that, you know, I wrote back and I said, well, I can tell you for sure it's not all me. You know, I try my best to do everything right, and God blesses, you know, blesses our efforts. So I'm a big believer in that. I also believe that what you put out in the world comes back to you, you know?
Okay. Well, even biblically, it says what you sow, you reap.
Right, for good and for bad.
Right.
You know, good and bad. You know, I believe that's just, you know, God's gonna bless you, and And in a worldly standpoint, people call it karma, right? What you put out is going to come back to you. So I think, but I see people all the time that are successful that don't practice faith and don't tithe and don't do any of those things.
But does it last? Always?
Does it last? So maybe, I don't know. For me, I know and I believe 1,000% that, we work hard, we pray hard, and we aim to do everything at the best ability that we possibly can. And for some reason, it just seems that it always works, and I think that's where God comes in, is that it always works. I think also the more you can show that you're faithful in doing things correct, the more God will give you too. Because growth, we could do well at this level forever, but the one thing that I'm grateful for in our case is that we've never just done well at this level. We've done well at this level, and then that level's continued to expand.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger impact that you can make, and always giving God the credit, and always doing things right, treating people correctly, giving as much as you can. I think that's really where God comes in, because to continue to grow for 13 years, year after year, and now at a compounding rate that's faster than ever before, I don't think there's any way that happens just in our own efforts. So,
Amen. All right. So next question. We started in business in 2011, April 2011. So we're looking at a lot of changes over the course of time. And I know that one thing we said back then that we still say now is we're kind of like talent scouts. We're out there, we're looking for talented people with gifts and abilities and all of that. And we still do that. In the age of social media now, it's just opened up a whole world of people that we can find out there. But here's the question that I'm sure you've been asked before. What is more important, talent or character when it comes to success?
I think that talented people with no character, I don't want in business. I've had them. I've had plenty of people that have talent without character, or talent with some character, or talent, with almost full character. But I think talent is important, but talent without character doesn't last. And so I would rather have someone less talented with a huge heart that really cares about people, that loves people, that they're great with people, they're smart with people, and but they're just lacking in the talent. That person you could take and mentor and coach. You could teach skill set. You can't teach integrity. You could, but by the time someone's an adult, they either got character and integrity or they don't.
Right.
And most people who don't, they hide it, right? They hide it, but eventually it comes out. And so I would rather work with character and a lack of talent all day long than someone talented who's just, you always have to think twice about their intentions or what they're doing when you're not watching or what they're saying about you when you're not around. That's just a disaster.
And isn't it sad that there's a lot of people out there that have a ton of talent, and yet the lack of character just blows things up over time?
Yeah, there's a lot of talent without character. There's a lot of talent without consistency. There's a lot of talent without work ethic. There's a lot of talent without moral values. There's a lot of talent without effort. There's a lot of people that are talented, but they're not willing to do, because character is also not just integrity, values, and like your moral compass. Character is also your mental toughness and your emotional intelligence and your work ethic and discipline and consistency. All that falls under character. It's who you are as a person. I think it's kind of rare now, to be honest, to find someone who's highly talented with good character. There's a really good book called The Ideal Team Player. And in there it talks about, I haven't read it in a while, but I haven't read it in like 7 years, but it talks about one of the biggest things is someone's ability to be smart with people, which means taking care of people, loving people, connecting with people, listening to people, being a good teammate and working with people. And then just talent without that stuff sucks, man. Talent without character is reckless sometimes. and destructive and malicious and manipulative. And, there's just so much. I've recruited and worked with thousands of people now over 13 years. And the ones with character, I've got people now that make six figures that lack in talent.
Mm-hmm.
But your character in the right system with the right coaching and the right, intentions, your character can carry you farther than talent will.
So would you say then, along with that being a person that others trust is more important than just being good at something?
Yeah, yes, if you're in a sales position, for example, if you're just doing a job, then people only need to trust you for an hour. That's the reality of it, right? But if you're gonna work with people and you're gonna build a company, people have to be able to trust you genuinely, not temporarily, right? Genuinely, you can't build a company or build people if you're not authentic. Or you can only pretend for so long,
right?
And people eventually find out who you really are. Your true character will slip through at times, and
it shows, especially when things don't go completely smoothly, right? That's when it'll show up.
Yeah, everyone's great when they're winning.
Right.
Everyone's great when things are good. But then your character comes out I think your character comes out in specific times consistently under pressure. Mm-hmm. Your true character comes out, right? Under stress, your true character comes out. When you're down and behind, your true character comes out. When you're desperate, your true character comes out. And sometimes when you're winning and you're at the really, really top, your true character comes out. And those are all very common places. And so talent in of itself is, in anything, in the music industry, in Hollywood, in sports, talent by itself is just not enough. Like every guy in the NBA, the lowest paid guy who took the bare minimum salary just to get a roster and a jersey, who you never see in the game, and when he goes in, he looks terrible.
Yeah.
That guy would spank the best player at any LA Fitness in the country.
Yeah.
But that guy, right? Every guy in the NBA is talented. Then you got guys in the NBA that are talented that blow it.
Right.
Because they're flashing guns all over Instagram Live, or they're blowing all their money in a strip club, or they're doing drugs and paying for prostitutes at a brothel. Like, they just ruin their whole career.
Even though they got to a point where they have every opportunity to be extremely
most talented
successful.
people in the world.
Yeah.
Not good enough, because at that point, everyone's good. At the top of anything, at the top of finance, at the top of real estate, at the top of the acting world, sports world, the music space, anything. At the top, everyone is talented.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone. There's not a lack of talent anywhere. But not everyone's at the top. Because that's where character, from the top to the bottom, from your moral compass to your work ethic and mental toughness, that whole thing, that resume is worth way more than talent.
Now, going along with that in biblical faith, because I asked you this question earlier, and you said a lot of people that are successful, and yet they're not necessarily proclaimed people of faith, and they don't even have any type of real faith.
Right.
And yet, some of the qualities that you mentioned, are the same qualities that God lays out biblically. You started listing them off, honesty and all these different things. You were basically almost throwing the 10 Commandments right down the list there. So there's a lot of people that maybe aren't, these faith principles is what I'm saying, are the ones that work, whether a person realizes it or not.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And then also, I think that if you look at the people who make it through when things are hard, right? Because talent's good when things are good. But what happens when things aren't good?
Uh-huh.
The people, in my experience, who go further, who are able to climb out of the hole, that are able to climb out of the rut, that are able to break a slump, right? That are able to get off the ground at their lowest point and get back up and keep going, traditionally are people that have some sort of faith.
Yeah.
That have God in their life somewhere. And it gives them something to cling to and something to count on and something to, without saying faith again, something to have faith in, right? That's what faith is. And so, and I think that's true over and over again, is that if you have faith and a belief in God and a relationship with God, in my case, in your case, in Christ, right? It gives you, I don't want to say a crutch. It's just, you're not alone. You're not by yourself. And, hey, God's got a plan. And if that's what faith is trusting that God has a plan. And so even at the lowest point, I'm going to continue to do what I got to do, and I'm going to pray hard. And I was talking to one of my agents, and she said, well, she's trying to hit a big milestone and stay a whole month. She said, I've done everything I can. She's like, the rest is up to God. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's exactly what it means to work like it's up to me, pray like it's up to God. I did all my part. Now I'm just going to pray that it's the right timing and it's supposed to happen.
Right.
And
isn't it true that there is both parts? So there's parts that God says, no, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And then I'll take the rest. But you need to do that step first.
100%. That's, at the risk of sounding controversial, that is my biggest complaint with old school Christianity.
Okay.
Is that at least in a very traditional conservative Baptist space, right? It's like it's almost a bad thing to work hard and be successful, because there's this, if that's what God wants for my life, then it'll just land in my lap while I'm sitting on my couch. It's like, I just don't think that that's true. I think you have to go do your part, and then God will bless your part.
Okay.
But I think the whole, if God wanted me to be rich, I'd be rich. Like, if God wanted me to, it's like, dude, you haven't done anything. You haven't even got off your couch. You don't even have a job.
Well, going along with that, okay, is there, spiritually from a faith standpoint, this is the way I see it. You tell me whether you agree or not. Failure, when you're trying something, failure is not necessarily failure. It's just part of the process. You learn how not to do it. You learn what didn't work. Maybe it's moving towards that success. Okay, there's course correction, whatever it is. But obviously there's effort involved. You can't fail if you don't even do anything. You just fail by default. So, and isn't it true that often doing something and then it doesn't quite get there, but that effort that's there, and then as God comes through, it just shows God's power more? But you would never see that if you, I know I'm sounding complicated now, but you would never see that if you weren't faced with the wall to begin with?
Yeah, I just think a lot of people just don't do things that are hard.
True.
Then I think that's the bottom line is people don't do things that are hard. They admire people who do things that are hard sometimes, right? So like, for example, if I'm sitting at home as a Christian and I'm watching the Harvest Crusade and I'm going, oh my God, Greg Laurie is amazing. He just put this whole, dude, he does things that are hard. That's why.
Right.
He takes risks. He does things that you're not willing to do.
Right.
This belief about, how we're supposed to, go out and spread the gospel. Yet I'm sitting on my freaking couch, doing nothing.
Uh-huh.
And then I justify my lack of doing things that are hard by, if it was meant to be, then, that's what would be happening. It's like, no, dude. Or, it's just a sign. We try something and then it doesn't work. We go, it's a sign. It's not for me. That's not what God wants for me. Like, no, it's not. It's a sign you didn't freaking try. Mm-hmm. And you should try again. It's a sign you got to put a little bit more effort. It's a sign that maybe your approach wasn't that great the first time. It's not a sign that you're not supposed to do it. Like, what good? Like that's the whole, a city on a hill cannot be hidden, right? Like, I think too many Christians hide in their house
No, I agree.
Just like, I'm just waiting for the Lord to come back. Like, he
Right.
ain't come back because you ain't freaking done anything. Like, what's he coming back to get you for?
Well, yeah, and I mean, the Bible tells us to be ready, but it doesn't tell us to sit there waiting for it.
That's my point. It's like,
We're supposed
but
to go out.
I also think that's a lot of times that's a denominational thing, because, you know, I've been to a lot of friends' churches, like black churches. It's a complete opposite, man. They're out like, we're gonna go take over the world, and we ain't gonna work for no one. We're gonna work for ourselves. And when God didn't put us here to not own, you know, and have ownership of things we do. So I don't know. Maybe it's, like I said, at the risk of being controversial, but I just feel like, I think too many people use faith as a crutch and faith as an excuse, you know, and if that's what God wanted for my life, then that's what I would have.
Okay.
But it's like, how were you going to get it? He was going to FedEx it to your house?
Well, going along with things that are hard and people not wanting to try. So let's go back in time, take a little time machine. We're back out on the sea and the waves are crazy and everything's nuts. You're in the boat and you see Jesus walking across the water. Do you think we're supposed to be Peter or the other one sitting on the boat? That's an obvious question, but
Yeah, of course.
okay. Then how come so many people are content to be the people in the boat watching?
I don't know. It's easier to watch. You know, it's easier to watch. I think that's the bottom line. You know, it's easier to watch and do nothing.
Right.
You know, and so, I mean, well, most people wouldn't do what Jesus did while he was here, which is get up and go around the world and hustle. That's what he was doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he was going out and starting a movement. That's what most people are not willing to do. Mm-hmm. You know, it's easier to sit back and wait for him to come than it is to go do something. You know, like while we're here, I think we're supposed to do something that has a lasting impact.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people go, well, that doesn't mean build a company. What good does building a company? What does that have to do for the kingdom? I think it has a lot to do for the kingdom. I think you could build a company that's kingdom focused, that contributes and makes people's lives better.
Right.
But let's pretend it's not. So then you're going to be a missionary. Well, who are you missionarying to at your house? You know what I mean? So like, again, you're doing nothing.
Right.
You know, so if you're not going to go do something, go do something.
Well, I can speak to that a little bit because of the sense that in 2011 when we started, that was not something that it was ever originally in my plan. But I will say this, you know, after being a pastor now for 35 plus years, I have met influence, and I even got a message this morning from somebody asking me, can I have a conversation with you about faith and wanting to set that up. I've met and experienced and touched many more lives outside the walls of the church than inside. Mm-hmm. And I think that even though it wasn't in my plan, it was in God's plan, and the best thing that ever happened to me was being literally financially crushed, broke, and then being led into doing things outside the walls of the church. Because you're right, I mean, Jesus said go into all the world, not just go build a fortress and stay within four walls. It's a place that we worship, it's a place we honor God, but at the same time, we're supposed to be out there influencing and having an impact on people. So I would agree with you 100%, whether it's controversial or not. I think it's definitely biblical. So let's tie a couple loose ends here up. So loyalty, this is one for some reason came to my mind. It seems to be a fleeting moral compass for people today. What does loyalty mean to you? Why is it important? What is it and what is it not?
I think loyalty starts in being congruent in yourself, the things that you believe or say that you believe versus the things that you do or speak, right? I think congruency is this is who I say I am and this is who I actually am, right? Okay. When those things line up, I think that's the first thing in loyalty. It's like it's loyalty to like me in my who I actually am. And then I think loyalty is, so I think everything successful comes down to relationships, and you can't have relationships if you're not loyal. Like Ronnie's an example. Ronnie is the most loyal human I've ever met. Mm-hmm. You know, she just is. I mean, like if she's got your back, she's got your back to the end of the world.
Right.
And then also if you burn her, you're probably never going to get another shot, you know, because she's very loyal.
It may take a very long time. Yes.
Or it'll take a long time, right? And so, and every once in a while, I've seen her be able to just like forget it ever happened and give someone another chance. And I'm like, that's how you know she really loves you, because you will never get that.
Yeah.
And so Ronnie is the most loyal person I've ever met, and she gets it from her grandma. Her grandma was the same way.
Okay.
People love loyal people. You know, loyal is I got your back, and I'm going to ride with you to the end of the world, no matter what. I always say that if opportunity controls and dictates your loyalty, you're not really loyal, right? Mm-hmm. Because loyalty means like I'm your person, you're my person, regardless of something else.
Yeah.
Loyalty means that you did it, you're guilty. All right, how do we fix it? You know, like I think that's loyalty at its most deepest form.
Yeah.
Loyalty is a choice. Loyalty is not a requirement. And so, just like marriage, you know, if your marriage lasts forever, that was a decision.
True.
That doesn't mean it was.
Doesn't mean it was always perfect.
Easy. Yeah, it just means like, hey, that's what loyalty is. You know, in sickness and in health, for better and for worse, in riches and in poor. You know, like that's a decision, right? It's a choice. I think loyalty is a choice. I think most people lack loyalty. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think it shows up in the quality of their relationships. Because loyalty is easy when everything's great. Loyalty is proven when it gets tested. That's when it's proven.
Now, would you say that true loyalty does not necessarily mean agreeing? So 100%. So true loyalty is if I see you doing something that I think is really dumb and is going to be detrimental to you, if I'm really loyal to you, I'm going to come alongside, not in front of everybody else, but I'm going to come alongside and go, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I just, you know, that's really having somebody's back, right?
Yeah, for sure. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's like, yeah, I was at this restaurant / club, and she's like, I drank way too much. And then so for some reason, it popped in my head. I said, how'd you get home? She said, I drove. And I'm like, what do you mean you drove? She's like, yeah, I drove home. And I was like, who were you with? She names a couple people. I was like, man, your friends suck. She's like, what do you mean my friends suck? I was like, if they were true friends, they would not allow you to drive home.
Right.
You know, like, oh, well, they drove home too. I'm like, hey, you guys all suck. Like, you know, there's Uber, there's a million resources in the world.
Yeah, you go back to where I'll get your car.
She's like, well, I got home, I'm fine. I was like, no, that's not the point. The point is, like, real friends would never let you drive. Like, ever, no matter what. You know, and I have a buddy of mine who several years ago was at a Christmas party, had too much to drink, and I did not let him drive. He was pissed at me for 2 weeks because I took his keys and I did not let him drive. I forced him to go home in an Uber. He brought up, this was like 5 years ago. He brought it up about 6 months ago. He said, you know why I love you? I said, why? He said, I still remember the day he would not let me drive home. No one has ever done that. To me, that's like the most juvenile thing, right? But he still remembered it 5 years later.
Right.
He said, that was the day I knew you really genuinely cared.
Even though he couldn't stand you for it.
He was so pissed at me for 2.5 weeks afterwards. He did not talk to me for 2.5 weeks because he said I embarrassed him. I said, what would have been more embarrassing is if you had drove home.
Right.
You know, and so I just think loyalty is, it's rare. It's rare because most people are looking out for themselves because they can't take care of themselves. And so they will put loyalty aside to try to get themselves ahead, and they go wherever it's convenient. And they just kind of float from friendship group to friendship group, or, whatever's going on, people are loyal to whoever they're with at the time, whoever they're hanging out with in the moment. True loyalty doesn't allow other people to badmouth other people to you,
Right.
If Jay Justin, for example, this is my man, this is my boy, this is my dude, right. And someone comes to me, oh my God, you won't believe what Jay Justin. I said, just stop. I don't even want to hear it.
Uh-huh.
Versus someone goes, oh wow, what did he do? Oh my God, wow, really? Oh, dude, what?
I've noticed
that's
that
terrible.
Too about him.
And then they'll come to me and be like, hey man, just so you know, so and so was talking bad about you. My question to that person always is, why were they talking bad about me to you?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Why were they talking? Yeah. Why did they feel comfortable saying it to you? I don't care what they said. What did you say when they said it?
Yeah.
Oh, I told them that. I didn't really. Yeah, exactly. The people don't talk bad to me about my friends because they know better. Because they know I'm gonna be like, give me a second, and I'm gonna call. Tell them what you just said.
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna say, hey, dude, that's my buddy. They know don't talk bad about Jay's friends to Jay, because Jay will stop you or he will say something. But that's real loyalty. I wasn't always that way. That's an area that I've grown in. But I think that's true loyalty. I think at the end of life, if you have 2 or 3 friends that are real friends, you're probably better off than most.
Right. Well, we're going to wrap it up with this. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and when we hit 150, we'll be doing this again. But anyways, let me wrap it up with this. Obviously goals change over time. You mentioned earlier you've already hit a lot of them that you guys have set out, but you're still just not even in midlife yet. You still got a long time, Lord willing. So goals change over time. Are there some things that God is kind of putting in your head, maybe that weren't there before, that you're just going to want to throw out there? And to wrap it up, faith or no faith, why do you think it's important to have some sense of why you might be here and what you should be shooting for?
Some sense of why you might. Well, here's what I'll say. I think progress is happiness. And I think nothing sucks more than being stagnant. Just stagnant in life. So many people are unhappy in life. The depression, anxiety, just a lack of purpose. I'm lost. That whole thing. I just watched this really, really, really good documentary called Stutz. Is that what it was called? Yeah, Stutz. Stutz. And it's from an actor, Jonah Hill, who struggled with a ton of depression and all that stuff. And he's been going to therapy. And in the documentary, his therapist is getting old.
Okay.
He has Parkinson's. And his therapist saved his life, right? And so he decided, Jonah Hill is, right?
I think so.
Yeah, the chubby, he does a lot of comedy, dumb humor movies.
Okay.
But he produced this film where he's interviewing his therapist instead of his therapist interviewing him, right?
Yeah.
And it's so good. It's so good. But this is one of the best therapists in the world. But one of the very first basic principles that therapist talks about in happiness is having something called a life force, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, this is non-scriptural based, but it's just the fundamentals still apply. And he said if someone could find their life force, it will cure their depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
And life force is a little triangle pyramid. And number 1 is exercise, your physical health, then your relationships with yourself, and then your relationships with other people. And the whole point of the whole thing is that it's about progress. People lose purpose when they're stagnant.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there, right? He talks about the difference between exercise and how Jonah Hill was talking about, because he was fat, right? And that was his biggest insecurity. And he said, my whole life, my whole childhood, my mom always told me go to the gym because the doctor told me I needed to go to the gym and exercise. He said, never until I started therapy did I realize that exercise is not just for your health, it's for your mental health.
Yeah.
You know, and so like, and I was watching, I was like, dang, that's so good. Right? So when you talk about like goals and things like that, I think people just don't have anything they're chasing. That's why goals are so important.
Right.
They just get stagnant. That's what I was talking about earlier. I'm like, okay, if I'm talking to someone, they're like, you don't want to build a company. You don't want to build a business. You don't want to be an entrepreneur. Fine. What do you want to do? But you got to do something. What do you want to do? You just want to, let's say church people, for example, right? I just want to serve God. Okay. So how are you going to do it?
Yeah, there's a million ways to do that.
Yeah, go do it. Do something. You know, if you're like, I don't want to be rich, fine. Be poor. But do something while you're being poor. Like, you got to do something, right? So I feel like if you're doing nothing and you're living a small life, yes, the small life, fine. We get to heaven, it's all the same thing. Fine, if that's what you believe. But like you could be fully devoted to Christ and do big stuff.
Sure.
You know, big stuff like the people you watch on TV, like the people whose conferences you go to. You're like, well, I don't know if I have that in me. Fine, don't do that. But do something. I think my goal now is to help people hit their goals. I think that's the most fun thing for me. It's helping people hit their goals. It's finding people who want to win, who want to purpose. Like the best people, that my favorite people to work with are people who want to be winners. I just want to win. I want to make a difference. I want to do something that matters. I want to become somebody. You know, I want to do something, you know, and helping them progress their life, right? Helping them find purpose and fulfillment and enthusiasm about life, because a lot of people get to adulthood and they get hit with the reality of adulthood, which is paying bills and taking care of responsibilities and raising kids and being a good parent or whatever. And then they stop living life at its fullest. They just stop living life, period. They go from living to surviving.
Yep.
And then they survive for 40 years if they do that successfully, and then they die. And they never really did anything because they spent their whole adulthood trying to survive. You know, and so I feel like my goal now is just is teaching and helping people go from surviving to, you know, actually like living and enjoying life, waking up being excited to be on the planet, you know, which I think so many people lack.
So as cliche as it may sound, go from surviving to thriving, right?
Yeah, or at least living.
At least living,
you know?
right?
I think everyone wants to thrive, but the reality is I think thrive's kind of cheesy now. Most people just got to go from surviving to living, enjoying life, having some sort of purpose, some sort of fulfillment, being excited to be on the planet, and you know, and I think that's a blast though, because you could see people's whole energy and their whole life just light up when they have something they could work towards, a goal they could chase, something they could do that brings them fulfillment, that contributes, that makes other people's lives around them better, and they just living a life that matters, you know, where you know you can be proud of what you're doing and what you do makes a difference.
Amen. And you know that wraps it up beautifully, because that is exactly what this podcast has always been about. Having the audacity to believe that God put you on this earth for more than just existing, but to actually make a difference in the world. So hopefully you're one of those people that has that audacious faith that says, hey, maybe I've heard something today that's going to get me out of this rut that I've been in, and I'm going to go and I'm going to start doing something, and I'm going to find that purpose. If you want to reach out, we're going to put contact information on the screen. You can watch the Win Anyway podcast. There's several seasons of that out with great content that you're going to learn, whether it's business or just in life. There's a lot of great principles there. Make sure you catch all of these podcasts as well. And of course, we showed you our producer earlier, and he's got great content out there as well with some of the things that he does. So all those will be there. Click all of them. You're going to enjoy them. And we appreciate you. We hope to hear from you. and also that you'll be subscribing if you haven't already and sharing these podcasts with your friends and family. God bless you, and we'll see you for episode 101 coming up very soon. Take care.